The morning sun barely penetrated the humid Brisbane air as Captain Paul Gunn crawled beneath the wing of a Douglas A-20 Havoc bomber at Eagle Farm Airfield. It was 7:42 a.m. on August 17, 1942, and the 43-year-old former Navy man watched intently as mechanics welded 50 caliber machine guns into the aircraft's nose, right where the bombardier used to sit. Sweat dripped from his weathered face, mixing with engine oil as he directed the installation. Every rivet, every weld had to be perfect. Lives depended on it. His family's lives depended on it. Somewhere in the Philippines, his wife Polly and their 4 children were trapped in a Japanese prison camp. He hadn't heard from them in 5 months. The last intelligence report suggested they were alive, held at Santo Tomas in Manila, but conditions were deteriorating. Food was scarce. Disease was spreading. The Japanese were threatening to execute all prisoners if the Americans attempted liberation. Paul Gunn had more reasons than most to revolutionize aerial warfare. Every bomber he modified, every ship he helped sink, brought him one step closer to freeing his family. The 5th Air Force was bleeding aircraft and crews at an unsustainable rate. In July 1942 alone, the 3rd Attack Group had lost 11 A-20s attempting high-altitude bombing runs against Japanese convoys. The mathematics of death were simple. Bombers approaching at 10,000 feet gave enemy gunners ample time to aim. When pilots dropped lower for accuracy, ship-mounted anti-aircraft guns shredded aluminum fuselages like paper. Captain Ed Larner had watched 3 of his crews burn in the Coral Sea the previous week, their aircraft cartwheeling into the ocean, leaving nothing but oil slicks and debris. The Japanese were reinforcing New Guinea with impunity. Their convoys steamed through the Bismarck Sea, delivering fresh troops and supplies to sustain their offensive. Traditional bombing tactics had failed. Something revolutionary was needed. Gunn's solution was elegant in its brutality. If bombers flew low enough, just 50 feet above the waves, they could skip bombs across the water like stones, hitting ships at point-blank range. But first, they had to survive the approach against concentrated deck fire. That meant transforming bombers into flying battleships, bristling with forward-firing weapons that could suppress enemy gunners before they could react. The standard A-20 Havoc carried 4 .30 caliber machine guns in the nose. Against naval targets, 30 caliber rounds were virtually useless, bouncing off ship armor like hail. Gunn needed 50 caliber weapons, the same heavy machine guns that armed American fighters. 4 of them, minimum, mounted where the bombardier normally sat, all firing straight ahead. Combined rate of fire, 3,400 rounds per minute, a wall of lead that would sweep ship decks clean of life. General George Kenney, the newly appointed 5th Air Force commander, had given Gunn exactly 1 week to prove the concept viable. Failure meant returning to conventional tactics and accepting catastrophic losses. Success might change the entire Pacific War. Gunn's modifications used 50 caliber guns salvaged from wrecked P-39 Airacobras and P-40 Warhawks that would never fly again. Their pilots were dead, but their weapons lived on. He mounted 4 guns on a specially fabricated steel frame inside the nose compartment. Each gun weighed 64 pounds. 4 guns plus 800 pounds of ammunition shifted the aircraft's center of gravity dangerously forward. The test flight nearly ended in disaster. The A-20 struggled to climb, its nose constantly wanting to drop. The pilot fought for control, reporting the aircraft felt nose-heavy as a brick. For 2 days, Gunn rebalanced the bomber. He relocated radio equipment aft. He adjusted trim tabs. He shifted ammunition storage. The second test pilot reported the plane flew angry but manageable. On September 12th, 16 modified A-20s struck the Japanese airfield at Buna. They came in at treetop height, all guns firing. The strafers destroyed 14 Japanese aircraft on the ground and suppressed every anti-aircraft position before the gunners could react. Not one A-20 was lost. Kenny wanted more, many more, but the A-20 had limitations. Its range was too short to reach Japanese bases across the Owen Stanley Mountains. Its bomb load was insufficient for larger targets. Gunn needed a bigger platform, the B-25 Mitchell bomber, longer range, heavier payload, more space for weapons. In December 1942, Gunn performed surgery on a B-25C. He removed the bombardier position and installed 4 50 caliber guns in the nose. Then he added 4 more in external cheek packs on the fuselage sides. The top turret was modified to fire forward. Total, 10 forward-firing guns. Then he added 2 more on each side. 14 guns total. The aircraft could deliver 215 pounds of lead per second, enough firepower to sweep a destroyer's deck clean in one pass. The ground crews called it Pappy's Folly. They were about to witness history. The heavily modified B-25 was dangerously nose-heavy. On takeoff, Gunn had to maintain full back pressure on the control stick just to keep it level. But once airborne, the Mitchell transformed into a flying destroyer. Kenny immediately ordered 12 more conversions. The 81st Air Depot Group in Townsville worked 18-hour shifts, modifying every available B-25. By February 1943, 30 strafers were ready for their baptism of fire. Then, bureaucracy intervened. Kenny sent the modification blueprints to Wright Field in Ohio, where Army Air Force engineers studied them for 3 days before sending back a stark message. Modifications impractical. Aircraft balance compromised. Flight characteristics dangerous. Recommend immediate grounding of all modified B-25s. The engineers had done their calculations. They hadn't counted on war's urgency or Pappy Gunn's genius. Kenny was in Washington when Wright Field's warning arrived. He walked into General Hap Arnold's office, where the engineers waited to explain why Gunn's gunships were aerodynamically impossible. Kenny's response was simple. 12 of these impossible aircraft just played the key role in destroying an entire Japanese convoy in the Bismarck Sea. Every transport sunk. 60 more are being modified as we speak. Arnold practically threw the engineers out of his office. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea began with intelligence intercepts on February 28, 1943. Allied codebreakers in Melbourne had decrypted Japanese naval messages revealing a major convoy departing Rabaul. 8 transport ships, 8 destroyer escorts, nearly 7,000 troops bound for Lae on New Guinea's north coast. General Kenny had 72 hours to stop them. Japanese commanders believed seasonal monsoons would shield their ships. Low clouds, heavy rain, poor visibility. Allied bombers couldn't hit what they couldn't see. They were right about the weather. They were catastrophically wrong about the bombers. On March 2nd, B-17 Flying Fortresses attacked from 15,000 feet through cloud breaks. They dropped 137 bombs and claimed multiple hits. Post-battle analysis revealed the truth. They had sunk nothing. High-altitude bombing against maneuvering ships remained futile. The convoy steamed on. Captain Ed Larner briefed the 90th Bomb Squadron at Port Moresby on the evening of March 2nd. His strike package included 12 B-25 strafers, 30 modified A-20s, Royal Australian Air Force Beaufighters, and P-38 Lightning escorts. The strafers would attack at masthead height, 50 feet above the water. Point-blank range. The plan was brutally simple. Overwhelm the deck guns with concentrated firepower, skip-bomb the ships while their crews were suppressed, and escape before Japanese Zeros arrived. At 0630 on March 3rd, the strike force assembled over Cape Ward Hunt. 137 aircraft total. B-17s would attack first from altitude, forcing defensive fire skyward. Then the strafers would strike from wave-top height. Larner led the B-25s in from the southeast, skimming the wave tops. 12 strafers in line abreast formation created a wall of firepower 300 yards wide. The Japanese transport Kyokusei Maru spotted them at 2 miles. Her captain ordered hard to starboard. Too late. The B-25s opened fire at 800 yards. Their combined 50 caliber streams walked across the water like chainsaws, shredding the ship's superstructure, demolishing the bridge, killing anti-aircraft crews before they could traverse their weapons. 3 B-25s released bombs at 100 yards. The first skip bomb struck below the waterline, detonating in the engine room. The second hit amidships. Within 30 seconds, Kyokusei Maru was dead in the water, burning and listing. She would sink in 40 minutes. The transport Teiyo Maru tried to run. Her captain ordered maximum speed, 15 knots against B-25s approaching at 240 knots. 4 strafers bracketed her from both sides. Converging fire swept her decks clean. The bridge windows exploded. The executive officer took 3 rounds through the chest. The captain survived another 10 seconds before a burst cut him down. 8 skip bombs were dropped. 5 hit. The ship broke in half. Most of the 1,100 soldiers below decks never made it topside before the hull split. Australian bill fighters strafed the destroyer Shikinami as she tried screening the transports. When B-25s arrived, the destroyer's guns were already silenced. 3 strafers attacked from different angles. Skip bombs hit port, starboard, and amidships. Shikinami was finished. Dead in the water, burning, abandoned 2 hours later. By 0900, the convoy was scattered across 40 square miles of ocean. 5 transports were sinking. 2 destroyers crippled. The surviving ships attempted reaching Lae. They never made it. The strafers returned at 1400 with fresh ordnance. The Japanese had no fighter cover. Their Zeros were refueling at Lae when the second wave arrived. The transport Ojima Maru took 12 hits. Her magazine detonated in an explosion visible from Port Moresby, 130 miles away. When smoke cleared, nothing remained. No wreckage, no survivors. 1,800 soldiers vaporized in 3 seconds. By evening, on March 3rd, the entire convoy was destroyed. 8 transports sunk. 4 destroyers sunk. Of nearly 7,000 troops that left Rabaul, Fewer than 200 reached Leh. Allied losses: 4 aircraft, 13 aircrew. MacArthur called it one of the most complete and annihilating combats of all time. The Japanese never again attempted reinforcing New Guinea by convoy. The war had turned, and it turned because of Pappy Gunn's impossible gunships. North American Aviation's president received a call from General Arnold that afternoon. "Get Gunn to California, now." Gunn didn't want to leave Australia. Every mission flew him closer to the Philippines, closer to his family. California meant going the wrong direction. Kenny made it an order. The 5th Air Force needed factory-built strafers, hundreds of them. Only Gunn could show the production engineers how to build them properly. At North American Aviation's Long Beach plant, factory engineers studied Gunn's hand-drawn blueprints with skepticism. Where were the stress calculations? Don't have any. Wind tunnel testing? Tested by flying. The center of gravity problems? Gunn showed them his field-expedient solutions. Equipment relocated, trim adjusted, problem solved through trial and potentially fatal error. The engineers spent 2 weeks reverse engineering Gunn's modifications into production specifications. They strengthened structures, redesigned mounts, added reinforcements where muzzle blasts threatened to peel aluminum skin. The first factory-built B-25 Strafer rolled off the line on May 10, 1943. 4 50 calibers in a solid nose plus a 75mm M4 cannon, the same gun mounted in Sherman tanks. Subsequent models pushed the concept further. The B-25H added more guns in cheek packs, 14 forward-firing 50 calibers plus the 75mm cannon. The B-25J eliminated the cannon but mounted 18 forward-firing machine guns, the most heavily armed production bomber in history. North American built 5,000 Strafer variants. They would sink over 800 Japanese ships and destroy 2,000 aircraft on the ground. Gunn returned to Australia in May 1943, exactly 6 weeks after leaving. His family remained captive. Intelligence reports from Santo Tomas grew increasingly grim. Food rations cut, medicine exhausted, prisoners dying from malnutrition. The Japanese commander had announced all internees would be executed if Americans approached Manila. The Strafers kept hunting. On November 2, 1943, Major John Hennebrey led 4 squadrons into Rabaul Harbor, 59 B-25s attacking simultaneously from multiple directions through phosphorus smoke. In 15 minutes, they hit 30 ships, sinking 5 outright and crippling 12 beyond repair. Rabaul was finished as a forward base. Gunn flew that mission. At 44, headquarters staff weren't required to fly combat, but his family was still in Manila. Every mission brought liberation closer. Through 1944, Strafers evolved further. Some carried 8 5-inch rockets. Others carried napalm. Some dropped parafrags, fragmentation bombs with parachutes allowing minimum altitude release without destroying the attacking aircraft. In 8 months, 5th Air Force Strafers destroyed 947 Japanese aircraft on the ground, sank 273 ships, and killed an estimated 38,000 enemy personnel. On October 20, 1944, American forces landed at Leyte. Manila's liberation was months away. Gunn flew multiple daily missions. Then came November 27th. At 0330, 56 Japanese bombers struck Tacloban airfield. Gunn was reviewing mission plans when bombs began falling. Shrapnel tore through the operations tent. A fragment severed an artery in Gunn's leg. Another hit his shoulder. The medical officer found him trying to stand, blood soaking his flight suit. The surgeon said he wouldn't fly for 6 months, probably longer. The injuries qualified him for medical retirement. Gunn refused. His family was still captive. On February 3, 1945, American forces entered Manila. Santo Tomas was liberated the same day. 3,700 Allied prisoners freed. Polly Gunn weighed 89 pounds. Daughter Julia weighed 63. They'd survived on rice and vegetable soup once daily for the past year. Gunn flew to Manila on February 4th against medical orders. Polly didn't recognize him initially. He'd lost 40 pounds and gone completely gray. She thought he was a doctor until he spoke her name. The official report stated Colonel Paul Gunn was reunited with his family at 1430 hours. The reunion lasted 4 hours. Then Gunn returned to duty. The war wasn't over. By August 1945, North American Aviation had built 9,816 B-25s. Nearly 5,000 were Strafer variants incorporating Gunn's modifications. They sank over 800 Japanese ships, destroyed over 2,000 aircraft, and revolutionized tactical aviation. The impossible gunships had become the Pacific's most effective ship killers. Gunn never flew combat again. Medically retired in 1948, he returned to the Philippines and rebuilt Philippine Airlines. On October 11, 1957, flying a routine trip from Manila to Baguio, his Beechcraft 18 encountered severe weather over the Cordillera Mountains. The aircraft flew into a ridge in zero visibility. Paul "Pappy" Gunn died instantly. He was 57. 6,000 attended his funeral. The obituaries mentioned his decorations: Distinguished Flying Cross, Silver Star, Purple Hearts. They couldn't capture what he'd truly accomplished. A mechanic from Arkansas had revolutionized aerial warfare through sheer determination and practical genius. His modifications influenced every attack aircraft that followed, from Vietnam-era AC-130 gunships to modern A-10 Warthogs. Today, Philippine Airlines flies worldwide routes from the foundation Gunn rebuilt. His portrait hangs in their Manila headquarters, though few know his story. At the National Museum of the Pacific War, one of Gunn's original sketches is displayed: yellowed paper, penciled measurements, no calculations. Just the drawing that killed 80,000 enemy soldiers and brought him home to his family. The Wright Field engineers were correct about one thing: Gunn's modifications were impossible. They were impossible until a mechanic who needed to save his family made them work anyway. In war, sometimes impossible is just another engineering problem waiting for someone desperate enough to solve it. Pappy Gunn solved it with 50 caliber machine guns, skip bombs, and the absolute refusal to accept that anything was impossible when his family's lives hung in the balance. He turned bombers into gunships, changed the Pacific War, and proved that one determined mechanic with a welding torch could destroy an empire. The Japanese called his creations the Black Death. His family called them Salvation. In 2008, 51 years after his death, the Air Force Association inducted Paul "Pappy" Gunn into the Air Power Hall of Fame. 3 grandchildren attended the Washington ceremony. They'd grown up hearing stories about the grandfather who turned bombers into battleships, who revolutionized aerial warfare with hand tools and determination. But the numbers only tell part of the story. Yes, his modification sank 800 ships and killed 80,000 enemy troops. Yes, factory-built strafers based on his designs helped win the Pacific War. But in the end, Pappy Gunn was just a mechanic who needed to save his family. Every rivet driven, every gun mounted, every impossible modification was an act of love disguised as engineering. Today, when AC-130 gunships provide close air support in distant conflicts, when A-10 Warthogs strafe enemy positions, they carry Pappy Gunn's DNA, the legacy of a man who looked at a bomber and saw a gunship, who looked at impossible odds and saw an engineering challenge, who looked at 3,000 miles of enemy-held ocean and saw the path home to his family. Some men change history with grand strategies. Paul Gunn changed it with a welding torch, salvaged machine guns, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat. His family was waiting.